On today's episode, we are going to be talking about a topic that if it's not in everybody's homes yet, it definitely should be. We are going to be diving into racism, microaggressions, privilege, protests, and what to do now with actual tangible steps that white community can step up and start doing.
Which is very helpful for a lot of people, like in me included. I just want to know, I need actionable steps. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to just talk about unless I can do something immediately.
This is not going to be an easy episode to listen to, but please listen to the entire thing all the way through. That's all that I ask. Here you go. Welcome to I Get It, a podcast for the modern woman who doesn't want to live mediocre. We're balancing babies on our hips, typing out that important email, and flipping pancakes at the same time. Not to mention, keeping things steamy with our husbands right before we put our face mask on for the night. It's not easy, and you are not alone. I'm your host, Tara Wages, and I get it. I'm going to open up this episode being extremely candid with you about the exact feeling that I'm processing right now in this moment, just because I want you to know where I'm at and that I am not where I want to be. This is Sunday afternoon for those of you who don't know. And today, I got on this morning to see if there were any protests happening in our community, and I did not see any. I got on our local anti-racism page. There was nothing posted, so we planned to just come in and do the podcast. Since then, we've made it to the office, and I discovered there were actually 2 different protests going on led by women of color within our community. And I was just so sad. I feel like such a fraud and a lot of shame right now that I didn't know about it. And I have received an invitation now to join a protest happening next Sunday led by a white woman in our community. And I have so much shame in that. I'm so proud that there's a white woman standing up and creating this for our community. But the shame comes to show that I am not embedded into our Black community in the way that I should be and that I want to be. Now, please know that what I'm sharing with you today is 6 years worth of me going deep into this work. I'm not jumping in today or this week. This is not a new topic for me in my life, which is why I'm finally talking about it. But I'm obviously showing you that I'm still not where I want to be or should be. So just know that I'm a woman who's also trying to figure this out. I am not a leader of anti-racism. When you are looking for someone to really dive deep and learn from, know that I am not a leader of this topic. There are some amazing women that I will point you to, such as Rachel Cargill or Monique Melton. They are doing this work. It's their business. They are incredible women. And so I'm not going to get this 100% right. But I'm showing up and I'm going to give you everything that I have. I'm laying my cards on the table. Now, know that some of these things that I'm going to be talking about are very difficult. They're difficult for me to confess that I've had these thoughts, and at times they may be difficult for you to hear because they may unveil some of your own thoughts, and I hope that they do. Because by unveiling those thoughts, that begins a process within us to start this process and dive into this work. So this, Wes and I were just talking about it, this is not pretty conversation.
No, I mean, to be very candid, we just had a little bit of an argument before, and just there's a lot of things that are still revealed to me daily. You know what I mean? You've done a lot of work on this. I know that's not done, but I don't know. It's a tough conversation. It's a tough topic, and I know it is for a lot of marriages too.
Yeah.
And us as well.
So we are still in that process, and it is not pretty. You're not going to feel good today. I'm not here for that. It's not time for you to feel good. It's not time for me to feel good because there are people that are actually hurting. Sorry. I get fired up about this.
Yeah, you do.
So buckle up. I want to acknowledge any of my Black friends and listeners in this podcast. I want you to know that I see you. Today's podcast, I am directing towards my white community because I want to talk about things that my Black community, you know these things. You don't need me to tell you about the systematic racism that you are dealing with every day. So this podcast is for my white community, but I want my Black community to know that I don't understand your pain. But I am here, whether it is you need somebody to stand in front of you to protect you, to pave a way for you to stand or stand behind you in your leadership. I want to be more than an ally. I will hold your hand when needed, but I want you to shine above all. Black friends, I'm going to share some personal thoughts because I know it will connect the dots between things that my white friends are struggling with. I'm not trying to take away from your experience or make this about me, but I'm going to put this in white people terms. So maybe they will walk away and dive deeper into this education. I know these thoughts are common, and I know they will ultimately help in opening up conversations within people's home, and that is my goal. So I want to start today by just giving you a brief insight into my history with race, and then let Wes share his history with race within our homes growing up, our communities. And I've mentioned before that I am a county girl. I grew up on the backfields and the backwoods. And really there weren't a lot of Black people within my specific county and community. I definitely had friends at school. I never saw any outward racism, but I definitely remember moments that there were microaggressions, which we'll get into, happening to them. But I really look to what created my mindset as far as diversity goes with my church. My parents took us to a church that was absolutely incredible, that was extremely diverse. I had Black friends, Mexican friends, Asian friends, mixed friends, Indian friends. We were all there. And I have a man in my life that if he walked in the door right now, he would say, "Come give your Black daddy a hug." Like, he is my Black daddy and he loves me. And I love that man with every bone in my body. So I was convinced I'm one of the good ones. You know, I'm doing this thing right. I love all people. And I was also taught, like many of you, that we should be colorblind. You know, we shouldn't see color. We should just accept people. I can remember being in 4th grade, and I know it was 4th grade because I remember the classroom, and saying, if you put a bag on all of our heads, I would love everybody the same. That's my perspective as a white person. Black people know their color every day because their color affects every aspect of their life. And if you don't believe that, don't turn me off yet because we're going to get there. And so I was naive to what my Black friends dealt with on a daily basis that I never saw. I was naive to know the life that my Black daddy may have lived prior to knowing me. And so I have definitely been guilty of microaggressions and thinking thoughts about the other Black people, you know, the ones that didn't conform to white society, that I'm having to unlearn and undo. So this applies to all of us, even those of us who at one time or now think we've got it figured out. Because even today, obviously, like I shared before, I still don't have it figured out if I don't know what my Black community is doing about a topic that involves them, but I'm so passionate about. Mm-hmm. So that just shows you how far removed I still am today, that I'm working towards changing. So Wes, why don't you give us some insight to you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Mississippi, you know, which has a large Black population, and continued into my high school as well, around 40, 50% Black. So it was common, you know, I never really thought that I saw or held any, Tira has educated me on microaggressions or anything like that, which I now know more than likely I did. The big thing was I was on the drum line at school, and I think there are only like 3 white boys on there because obviously we can't play as good near.
That might be a microaggression. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm saying that I was far less superior in my ability to play music, but yeah, you know, I have a couple embarrassing stories of growing up. Kind of, I mean, these were in, I would say, honestly, we were married.
Mm-hmm.
When I started realizing some things that growing up, my dad would say that were completely racist. And, growing up, you hear your parents and you just never really think that they're racist at all. I mean, like, I have black friends. Like, I'm not racist because I have a black friend.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet in a white community, you may say, or even around in a mixed community, I mean, you may say and just not even realize that it's a racist comment. And so I do remember one day we were on a photo shoot and I said something that was, I didn't know that it was a racist comment, but now looking back, I'm like, how in the world would I not know that? Do you know what I mean? Like, it just completely, there are multiple things, that I heard growing up now, that were said that going back, I'm just, I can't believe, that I would take those things and say them and not even realize that. So thankfully my mind has been opened, and I understand a lot of things, and definitely not to say that
you know everything.
No, I know everything because I don't. But yeah, I think that goes for a lot of white families. You grow up thinking, oh, it's fine, we have black friends, but yet in your mind, you've heard things growing up, you said those things. Even in a group of white friends, you may say those things, which is completely wrong.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was kind of it.
Yeah. So we have different backgrounds growing up. And as far as I never heard my parents say anything racist. But I'm having to, where Wes is having to unlearn things that he heard firsthand, I'm having to unlearn what society has told me how Black people are supposed to be and act. And so today I'm going to cover 4 different topics. The first being the layers of racism and microaggressions. The second being privilege. The third being protests that are happening right now and why they are important. And then what to do now. I'm going to first just start by talking about racism because I think we all have an idea of what racism is. We think we know, like, oh, it's obvious, the KKK, obvious police brutality that's only caught on video. We don't believe it exists otherwise. White supremacy, the N-word, like those are the racist things. But then what we need to realize is there's this unobvious layer, and that's referred to as microaggressions. The definition, sorry, I stuttered, of that is indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group. Sorry, that was difficult for me to get out. I'll be honest with you. I was first introduced to this phrase 6 years ago, and when I heard it, I rolled my eyes. I'm definitely ashamed of that now. See, when I was growing up, when I was in school, I was made fun of for the color of my skin. If you are not watching on YouTube and you've never seen me, I am literally the palest level of pale that you can be in the CoverGirl palette, my makeup. And I can still hear words of what guys said to me growing up that affected my sense of worth. I felt like the ugliest human alive. And in fact, my very first boyfriend, his nickname for me was Al, which stood for albino. He made up the nickname.
There was also a teacher in college.
There was a teacher in college that made comments to me about my paleness. Yeah. And I'm not sharing that to bring glory to me. I'm sharing that because oftentimes we as white people create narratives in our head to try to convince us that we've been hurt just as bad of that as Black people. Now, you may not have been made fun of for the color of your skin, but there may be something else in your life that you have felt discriminated against because of. And so we convince like, oh, they should get over their issue because I've experienced an issue too that's similar. But what we don't recognize is those isolated incidences in my life, although they shaped me, are 1% of the amount of instances that our Black community has experienced. If I was made fun of 5 times a year for my skin color, they were made fun of probably every day, 5 times a week for the color of their skin, if not more for some of them. And I can remember hearing it happen, but they're always like these sly comments. And I'm going to give you some examples of microaggressions, and I got these from an article called Identifying and Responding to Microaggressions. You are the whitest Black person that I know. I've literally heard somebody say this. Mm-hmm. And what that means is white is supreme. You are starting to live up to my white standard in your Blackness. I'm intimidated by you, or telling a person of color that they are too loud or animated. We want them to assimilate to our standard, our level of whiteness. Sit back, wait, listen, be quiet. Don't be too much for me. I don't see color. There's only one race, the human race. And that's denying a person of color their ethnic and racial experiences, saying what you've experienced, I don't need to see that. I don't acknowledge you. Clenching our purse or wallet when a person of color walks by says, you are dangerous to me. A television show or movie that features predominantly white people with no representation of people of color says, you don't belong here. And I'm going to say a couple of things about that. That last one is something that we have struggled with within our own business. We do a video production agency. And for a long time, when we did videos, we would use either the models, if we're working for the city or a specific company, that they recommend us to use. So we have not had a lot of representation within our own video work. And we struggled with that. But we used the excuse for a long time of, we're just doing what we're told. Mm-hmm. We're just doing what we're told. And that has been something that we have had to learn and undo within our own business to be more inclusive, to reach out to our community, and to make sure everyone is represented. My friend, Nikki Innocent, who is just an crazy, amazing woman that I just get passionate even just thinking about her face in my head. I'm going to share a link to her business. She's a life coach on my page. But she explained this best to me. She said, people walk around if they're walking around with their elbows hanging out and they accidentally hit you, they may not know that they hit you, but they still hit you and it still hurt. So that person is responsible for how they hurt you, and they need to be the one to apologize. And that visual just made so much sense to me. Wes steps on my toes literally all the time. Literally all the time. It's like he can't even feel his foot on top of my foot at times because his feet are so big. And that still doesn't keep me from screaming and saying, oh my gosh, you're standing on my foot. Realize what you're doing. And then him having to apologize to me. That visual just made so much sense to me on what microaggressions are, that we are just walking around hitting each other without even meaning to hit each other. But these phrases, these terms, and there are hundreds of them. And I think that's what the struggle is, because we don't know. That's where the education comes. These phrases leave people feeling bruised. They may be unintentional, but in the same that we have a few instances of feeling teased and remembering that, the people in our Black community hear these things every single day. Yeah. Take that in. They hear it every single day. What we have experienced is absolutely nothing compared to theirs. I want to give another example that may help this register, okay? A few years ago, there began a movement in the U.S. For women. I'm going to add that this was for white women, that started to talk about the imagery in magazines and the standard in which we are supposed to live up to. We're constantly bombarded with body image that we cannot obtain, leading to low self-esteem, eating disorders, and sadly suicide for some women that They can't obtain this thing that they think that they're supposed to be. I get that. But now think about it deeper. Listen to this. Out of the 442 times a model, actress, television personality, singer, or political figure has graced the cover of Vogue magazine in the last 30 years, just 30 of those times featured a Black or African American person. So only about 7% in the last 30 years, y'all. Disney created their first Black princess in 2009.
Princess Tiana.
Princess Tiana. I was married. I was 23 years old, which means my Black friends that I grew up with were directed to look at white women as their examples of beauty, grace, and someone deserving of Prince Charming. These things matter. They affect self-worth, self-esteem, and identity. What effect do you think that has had on Black women? If we as white women feel bad because editors are photoshopping cellulite out of images, imagine how we would feel if we didn't even see ourselves.
Yeah.
This is another white person thing that we do. We've all done it. We have a friend who's pregnant. What are you going to name your baby? Oh, I'm going to name him Jake Eli. Oh no, you can't name your baby Jake because I went to school with a guy named Jake and he was such a jerk. You can't do that. Jakes are jerks. And because of that Jake in our life, that one Jake, every time we meet a Jake, we are like, ugh, I don't trust you. You're probably a jerk just like that other one, until they earn our trust. If we remember those instances, we always have those like few names. Jake is my name. I'm not editing that out or changing names. Jake, I still think you're a jerk. But if we still feel that passionately about those 3 people in high school that did us wrong, imagine how Black people feel every time a white person they don't know walks into a room. We have not earned their trust yet. Because 100 other white people have walked in before us and said something hurtful or overlooked them or didn't give them the job that they deserved. We as white people have to earn their trust just in the same way that we have projected onto all of those one single bad people that have done us wrong.
Yeah.
I hear white people do this all the time to Black people of, oh, I went to this airport and that one Black person was rude to me. And they stereotype based on that. If Black people did that to us for every one time we did something to them, dude, no one, like, things would have ended for us a long time ago because we have not earned their trust. Our Black community has been hurt by microaggressions every day in the media, in their schools, on social media. They've experienced words from both hateful people and well-meaning white people. And if we don't trust Jake, we have no right to expect them to trust Tira or Wes or Ashley or Matt or Amanda because they've been hurt by hundreds of them before. So this is why we educate ourselves. So we can try to put our elbows down as best we can and stop crashing into the community that is around us, because they should feel safe in the company of white people. Wes and I were talking about this right before we turned this on, because a lot of people don't think education is enough. They're like, no, give me an action. Tell me just something to do right now. And I say that education is enough right now because think about when you're trying to save money, okay? And Wes and I always have this discussion. You save your pennies too because pennies matter. Pennies lead up to $1 and $1 leads up to $100. So by educating ourselves and learning about these microaggressions and how we use our tongue affects other people, one slip up, that may feel like a penny. But to that Black person, every single time that penny comes out, that's added up to $100. That's added up to $1,000. And now we have left them feeling bruised and beaten every single day. So we educate ourselves so we can stop the pennies. They don't feel like a penny to them, by the way. Those feel like $1,000. So we can stop those nicks that just scrape them all the time so they can have confidence to live in peace. They can have confidence to walk into a room full of white people and feel like they're not going to be immediately cut down. Okay, now we're going to move on to our second topic, and that is privilege. Do not turn me off right now. This is where a lot of us get hung up on. You hear you have white privilege and you immediately get defensive because
I worked for myself.
You don't know me.
Yeah.
You don't know what I've done.
Yeah.
I've been there. That's where I was, and that's what I thought. So I'm going to tell you about my background so you can see why I felt that way. I grew up in a double-wide trailer. I spent most of my life ashamed about that. My dad quit his job when I was little to take care of us because my mom traveled a lot. But when I was in 7th grade, the business my mom was in with her family ended, and we lost all of our income at that time. I then watched my parents work multiple jobs trying to make ends meet, and there were times my mom would go to her waitressing job instead of going to church with us. It was not easy at home. It was hard. So when I heard the word privilege, I dismissed it. Because even though my life was good, thank you, Mom and Dad, for what you did and gave me, and the fact that my life wasn't handed to me, I am so grateful for that. It did not feel like a privilege. Here's what you need to know. White privilege does not mean that you didn't work for what you have. It does not mean that things were just handed to you, although I have lots of people that is their story. Granted, being white, you have a greater chance of having things passed down, like family land, trust funds, jewelry from your grandmother that are now valuable. All of those things are a privilege. So I'm going to give some examples of privilege that we don't often see that we have, and then talk about how our country was actually designed for a deeper level of privilege. I'm 33 years old, which means my parents are in their 60s, and they remember when school was desegregated. I've heard stories about it my entire life. But what I never thought about is that means my friends' parents remember what it was like to go to the all-black school, to not be able to drink out of the same water fountain, to not go swimming in the summer with their friends, and not being able to buy a home. That never registered for me. Let that soak in. We are one generation away from segregation, which means the stories that are currently being told are told on first-hand knowledge, not passed down from ancestors. So privilege is being able to wear a hoodie and not considered thuggy. Yeah. Privilege is being raised by parents who went to a school where they were accepted and given a quality education for their entire life. Privilege is being able to go bird watching in Central Park and not have the police called on us. Have you ever been scared the police was going to be called on you by just walking? Privilege is being able to write my name on a resume and actually get a call back because they assume that I'm white. Privilege is being able to get a prime rate loan, which means getting a better loan, interest. Privilege is being able to trace our heritage to back before the Civil War. And we all know our mamas are on that Ancestry.com. Yeah. Telling us what so-and-so and so-and-so's great-great-great did. Privilege is having representation that fights for our, as white people's, rights in the Senate, Supreme Court, and White House. Privilege is knowing people will believe your side of the story. Privilege is not having to be afraid when you're pulled over by police. Wesley, I've been pulled over in the car with you at least 10 times by a policeman.
That was a long time ago.
Have you ever been afraid?
Never.
Of the 10 times, I've seen him get 2 tickets. Privilege is having the confidence that you won't be criminalized because of past offenses. That is just the tip of the iceberg of what privilege is. Privilege is embedded in everything. Researchers at Yale and Northwestern estimated that for every $100 in a white family wealth, black families hold 5.4 cents, $5.04 to every $100. Did you know, speaking of family land, that up until 1970, redlining was legal, meaning Black people either couldn't get housing loans or they could only get them in certain areas. And after 1970, Black people still couldn't get prime rate loans, meaning their loans would be far more expensive than compared to a white person, even a white person of equal status. So what that means is if we are taking out a loan, we may get a 4% interest rate. So we may pay $200,000 compared to that of our Black friend of equal status that may get a 6.8%. All this is going to be linked in my show notes. That will pay over $300,000 on the same size house, same price house. Yep. That's privilege, y'all. Did you know that Black slaves were forced to take the name of their slaveholders, thus losing their own identity? Okay, so we had just said that all of our mamas are on Ancestry.com and we're so proud of what so-and-so's great did. When we look at our Black friends, their last names literally represent a person, not all Black people, but the people that have come from slave generation. Their last names come from the people that enslaved them. Talk about identity and what that means to them. Yeah. That is painful to know. That is painful. Do you know that African Americans are incarcerated more than 5 times the rate of whites? This goes along with, I've been seeing this meme floating around that police kill more white people than Black people every year. You know, the higher number of whites compared to Blacks. When you see those things, go and look at percentages. Look at the percentage of whites in America compared to the percentage of Blacks in America and how those numbers are so far off base and compared to that of what's happening in our jail system and in police brutality. It's astounding. This one shakes me to my core, and I'll just say it. Yeah. I'm bringing it home right now. Did you know about the birth rate in Alabama? The infant mortality rate of Black infants remains twice that of white infants. That means this is 2018, so it was not that long ago. Black infant mortality was 11 infant deaths per 1,000 live births compared to white infant mortality at a rate of 5.1 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. That means twice as many Black babies are dying in our state compared to white babies. Let that sink in. That means our privilege literally begins at birth. At birth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So please do not talk to me about you not having privilege. These are just a few small examples of systematic racism that shows our privilege goes much deeper than the surface of just feeling safe. How amazing would it be to simply just feel safe, much less go to a good school, buy a nice home, get a job with equal pay, not go to jail for minor infractions that are often dismissed for white people every single day. Now, white people, I know you didn't ask for your privilege. I didn't ask for mine. And our generation today did not design the system that has been built for us. We have not asked for this, and I'm sure the majority of us wish that we could just go in and knock it down. But we have to recognize that these practices are still active. Do you know that a school in Mississippi, in Cleveland, was just desegregated within the last decade? Yes.
No idea.
In Cleveland, Mississippi, within the last decade.
In the Delta.
These practices are still in place. So we need to recognize how it's been built so we can undo it. It is our job as white people to undo this because we have built this. Please hear me. Racism is not a Black person's problem. They didn't design it. They didn't build it. It was built by our white ancestors years and years ago, and by our white ancestors not that many years ago. It's our job to undo it. And I know there's a lot of you that say, but all of Americans have privilege. It's better to be a homeless person in America than it is even in Africa or Liberia or anywhere else in the world. Americans are so privileged. Just be thankful for what you have. Yeah, that's easy to say when you're living in a $300,000 home that was built on your grandfather's land. And that part of it may not even be your story, but again, I've just named 10 other things that represent your privilege that you do have. You were born into a state that you had a better chance to survive than that of your Black community. So yeah, you do have it. I now want to address the protests that are happening because this is a topic that I see so many white people questioning and having issue with. I either hear the phrase that peaceful protesting doesn't do anything, or I hear violence is only hurting your cause. Just be peaceful. I want to first say that protests do work. And the case for George Floyd is a perfect example of how. I want to say that if there was video evidence of you choking a man and the police had it, you would be arrested immediately. No question asked. Now, I do believe that your arrest would be more peaceful than that of a Black man, but there still would be an arrest as soon as the video came out. In comparison to what we are experiencing right now with George Floyd, it took 4 days for him to be arrested. 4 days. If that video had not come out, protests had not happened, nothing would have been done. And hold your argument because I have proof for why it wouldn't have been done. And some of you could say, if a video comes out that he was resisting arrest or whatever, which we haven't seen that so far, but if that does come out, okay, whatever he has done in his past, whatever he was doing in that moment, at the point of his death, he was handcuffed and on the ground. A cop was on him for 8 minutes. There were 4 men around that could have handled the situation. The death was unnecessary. The death was murder, period, no matter what happened before, after, or anything. For those of you who still may not think that the protests have had anything to do with the arrest, think about what happened in February with our Ahmaud Arbery. There was videotape evidence of his death. The police had videotape evidence of his death. It wasn't until that was released to the public and protests and a nationwide uproar happened that those arrests were made. Do you know how many days it was from the time of his death to the time that man was arrested? 74 days. 74 days. If those videos had not gotten the uproar that they did, those 2 men would still be walking free. And it's proof that they would have been because they had been for 74 days. Will Smith said it best. Racism is not getting worse. It's getting filmed. So that's
big.
Yeah. For those of you who think that this is a new problem, those of you that are just realizing because of what's happened with George Floyd, this is not a new issue. The Black community has known this has been going on for years. These things right here are why people are finally being held accountable for it.
Yeah.
So, a few things to remember. Our country was created due to a protest. The Boston Tea Party, those guys caused a riot in their day. And change was made. Jesus. People created a marketplace in the temple, and he got angry. Went in there, he started tearing that thing apart, knocking over tables, throwing money around, using a whip to get all of the animals out of there. He was angry. And those people learned their lesson. If we were listening to Black people nicely say that they were experiencing injustice, change would have been made a long time ago. But our society has muted Black voices. It has overlooked their needs, and a Black person shouldn't have to destroy, videotape, or be murdered to have white people hear and believe their stories. This is the part that really gets to me. So my work for me began 6 years ago with the murder of Eric Gardner. He was choked by a police officer. The police officer has served no time for it. And that began my journey of realizing there is something wrong in our system. How many Black people have died since then? I should have done this math to look at it, but a lot. In the last 3 months, there have been three. A woman was shot in her home while she slept in her bed because a policeman raided the wrong house. Do you know this, Wes?
Yeah.
The wrong house. Let that sink in. This has been happening a long time. And I'm just now, for myself, I'm just now being bold enough to speak publicly about it. I've been talking about this on safe times. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther King Day, I'll talk about racism and other areas where I feel safe. But there are so many white people that are just now even admitting that there's a problem or even realizing that there's a problem. So how many Black murders do we have to watch in the comfort of our home before we finally wake up and create change? A friend of mine messaged me and they were like, I can't imagine how scared my Black friends are. And I said, and she is one of the greatest people that I know, truly. I said, Black people aren't any more afraid today than they were a month ago. Their lives haven't changed. If anything, they're frustrated that their brothers and sisters have to continue dying for white people to realize and wake up. And lastly, if you still are saying, well, they shouldn't be doing that violence, they shouldn't be tearing stuff up.
Yeah.
I have two things to say about it. First of all, a lot of those people that are up there tearing stuff up are white people that aren't educated of what's going on. They are young and they just want to destroy some stuff. That is true. That's true. So that's frustrating. If I was a Black person, I'd be whooping some tail. White people should be up there. They should be protesting. They should be standing alongside of our Black community, but they need to keep their hands to themselves. Number two, imagine if that was your child. As moms, we so often say, if anybody hurts my baby, they just better watch out. Or dads will say, yeah, whenever a guy comes to take my girl on a date, I'm going to stand out there with a shotgun. First of all, that's my least favorite thing to hear. I think that's so stupid. Why don't you want your daughter to one day? Don't get me on that tangent. Yeah. Anyways, white people talk about hurting somebody all the time if somebody ever does anything to their kid. So imagine if you watched your son, your brother, your sister, your neighbor die over and over and over again so publicly where it is blatant murder and nothing is being done. And again, we're not talking about a neighbor killing a neighbor. We are talking about the government. We are talking about policemen killing, where there should be accountability for that. Yeah, I would definitely be destroying some stuff until justice was served. 100%. And I truly believe that if it was you, you would be too.
Yeah, it's sad that it takes that much to have their voices heard.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine the feeling of not being able to raise my voice and not have somebody listen.
Because they've been raising their voice for a long time.
And why does it take this much for people to listen?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And why does it take having it to be on film for people to believe them? Mm-hmm. I want to make something very clear, though. I am not anti-police. I think that we have police in our country that are beautiful, amazing creatures, and we don't even see a fraction of the good things that they are doing in both the Black, white, Latino, every single community. I believe that we have beautiful people as police, and what they do every day is a type of bravery that I will never understand. ever. They leave their home every day, and ironically, the only people that I think do understand it, but it's super ironic, are Black people. Because Black moms are scared every day if their son is going to come home. And a police officer's wife is scared every day that he's going to go to a call that he is killed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They both have someone at home scared to death for their lives. And so I give our police so much love. And what I hope for them during all of this is that they will feel empowered to stand up when they see white supremacists, when they see their partners acting out in racism and wrongness. I believe that they will be retrained to not react in fear,
Yes.
but react with a full situation of what's happening. I hope that they feel empowered to stand up more often when things are wrong. So I just want to be super, super clear about that I believe that our police officers as a whole are good. But those few bad apples, they just shine brighter than everything.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's so sad. So what do we do? This is where Wes and other people come in because they give me a tangible step of what I can actually do.
Yeah.
Step 1 is to learn. And that is the hard part because a lot of people don't want to take the time to learn because learning is hard. And this learning does not feel good. It untangles the darkest parts of what we were designed to be and creates awareness about areas of our lives that we need to change. But we educate ourselves. If you are just now seeing some of these ideas today that, oh man, I never realized the privilege that I have, or I've never thought about microaggressions, then that is a key that you need to start this process. And let me say, you don't learn by asking Black people around you. I know that that's what you think, and that's the first place that you go to, and I have done that as well. I did it with a very close friend that it was a safe space for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where we start. We start by Googling. We start by looking up anti-racism and clicking through the links. Even today I did that, and I've learned so much more than I didn't even see before. We find an anti-racism leader such as Monique Melton or Rachel Cargill, and we follow and support their work. We listen. Our job is to listen, not to ask questions. And you may think, that's why? Why? Because Black people are tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again. They are tired of having to explain their pain to you. If you're a woman that has experienced rape or some kind of deep trauma in your life, you don't want somebody just walking in on their lunch break and saying, tell me, how did your rape make you feel? No, that is not how you do it. So you listen. You read books. I will have several in the show notes, but White Fragility is a great place to start. And you watch and you listen and you watch and you listen. And this is a long step that I honestly don't think you ever get out of. But you do that for long enough until you feel confident to move to step 2, which is talking to friends and family. And I will say, step 1 was uncomfortable, but that was just the beginning of your uncomfortableness. I really do think that my family dreads seeing me come now. I talked about privilege at every Christmas event that I went to this year, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that this is not my first time I'm talking about it. I have been really trying to do this work for a long time. Even within the last 7 days, I have been in situations where other people have been saying microaggressions or rolling their eyes at certain aspects of this, that I've had to speak up. And it is not comfortable, but that is where change is made. I'm so grateful for the woman who was brave enough to speak into my life, because yes, Eric Garner changed things for me, but I also had a woman who things just happened at the same time that was so brave that called me out on some stuff. And that is powerful. So talk to your friends, talk to your family. Support Black-owned companies. And honestly, I actually feel like this is an easy step to do. It can be as simple as the movies that you watch. You know, those numbers and those ratings affect everything. Those actors getting hired again, their salary, the type of content that we consume. And not just Black movies and shows that highlight the hard stuff, not just the Civil War movies and the slavery movies, because Black people are so tired of playing roles that are victimized or gang related or showing them in a negative way. But watching the movies, there's that one on Netflix that we watched.
Self-Made. And we watched Let the Kids watch Motown Magic.
But watching shows that celebrate like African culture and beautiful stories, the NASA movie where the women that like set people into space, like there's some incredible movies out there. So that's easy. That's entertainment. The people that you hire, the businesses that you go to and spend your money. If you're an Instagram or TikToker, find people of color, follow their work, and engage in it, because a lot of them, that's a business for them. Did you know when you engage with people on Instagram that they make money, they grow, they get sponsorship? So by doing that, you are ultimately supporting a woman-owned business. To my Bachelor Nation fans, have you ever looked at the number of followers people of color contestants get compared to that of their white castmates? It's disgusting. Did you notice that on Listen to Your Heart, there was one Black woman?
We watched that show.
She was on this show for several weeks, and I think they showed her for a total of 60 seconds. It blows my mind. So whenever the shows that you're watching, if you're going to sit there and follow Hannah Brown, you better be following Rachel Lindsay. Get the full picture. Follow women of color and support their business. That's easy. I will also have several of them because I follow a lot that are just great content creators. One of my favorite people right now is a lady in Toronto. Her home stuff is off the chain. Number 4, donate to causes. So putting your money where your mouth is. And I'm going to be the first to say to you, I have just started step 4 process. And we have been donating our time, helping different people in our community with different things. You don't need to know everything that we do. We've donated our time, and I have donated money to other areas. But I have just now, for the first time this week, donated to our local organization. So again, this is work that I am still doing. I have been doing abroad, and now I need to refocus to what's happening into my own neighborhood. I'm calling myself out on that. I just want you to know that I'm still figuring it out. But you can donate towards anti-racism movements. You can pay for education from Black-owned educators. So if you really want to dive deep, there are people that have e-courses. We create e-courses for people. We do a lot of business e-courses, but there are e-courses out there on racism that will just take you straight in and get to the issue and teach you in a way that so you don't have to spend so much time Googling. So investing in an e-course. I know Monique Melton offers one. Rachel Cargill, you can donate to her cause. And one of the things that she does is she helps provide counseling for Black women. That is incredible. We talk about counseling all the time. If I need counseling because somebody made fun of me one time and I'm sitting here telling y'all go to counseling for these things, imagine the depth of what these women are going through. That's such a powerful cause. So find a cause, donate. And number 5, use your voice to amplify that of Black men and women. At Lovey on Instagram, she's fantastic. She says, if you don't know what to say, you can always share the words of someone who does. If you can't sing, pass the mic. I've had so many women reach out to me this week and say, I don't know if I should use my voice. And this is what I have and will say to them. Not saying anything says everything. Being silent doesn't help anyone. Now, here is the deal. You may speak and you may get it wrong. And in fact, I'm 100% wrong that I have said something today that hits that my elbows may have been out for somebody, and I don't know. If I did, I hope that that person will be brave enough to come and speak to me and tell me that I got it wrong so I can learn and so that we can learn together. When we were kids, if we did something wrong, our parents, I'm quick to put my kids in their place, to teach them something. And it doesn't mean they didn't love us or I don't love my kids. It doesn't mean that I don't want them there. It's just so we can grow. It doesn't mean that the process doesn't hurt. I used to hate getting in trouble. Especially my dad would yell at me at church sometimes. And it was embarrassing and shameful. Yeah, it feels that way. But it's better to feel a moment of shame and go forward knowing truth and growth than to stay small and silent. So yeah, it's scary. It is scary to use your voice, and I'm not invalidating that. But Glennon Doyle says it best. She says, the worst thing is privately hiding her racism to stay safe, liked, and comfortable, while others suffer and die. There are worse things than being criticized, like being a coward. That is what motivates me to speak.
Yeah.
Even when it's scary, because my comfort, it does not matter when there are people that are dying on the streets. And if I don't use my voice, then I'm doing an injustice to them and to our society as a whole. We've been talking to our kids about this a lot, and I've been explaining to them, what Black people are experiencing and in their innocence. One of them looked at me and said, well, why don't they just move? If they're hurt all the time, why don't they move? And that was said in true innocence. And I said, because we want them here. We want Black people to be a part of our culture. What they bring to us is so much love and joy. Oh man, if you've never been inside of a Black church, you are missing out. The joy, the life, the abundance of grace and beauty, they provide so much to our culture. And they also provide us with lessons that are difficult. Their hurt offers us humility to show that we need to do better. We need to see that hurt. So now you know what to do. You don't get let off the hook anymore. There are 5 action steps, and I'm sure you will find more online of things that you can actively do to help end this crisis. And offering grace and love and listening will go so far.
Yeah.
So that's it. That is the episode today. I'm not asking for anything. Usually this is the point of the show where I'm asking for something. I'm not asking for anything today. Don't spend another minute reviewing or liking or whatever. I want you to leave this episode and I want you to go follow 5 anti-racism accounts on whatever platform you use. Go listen. Don't talk yet. Just listen. I want you to go Google redlining, systematic racism, racism and femininity. I want you to have a conversation with your best friend and donate. If you cannot find your own resources, then I have made an extensive list for you on my website, tierwages.com/010010. And I honestly don't even want to share that with you. I just don't want to give you the excuse of I didn't know where to start.
Right. Yeah.
But please only go there if you don't know where else to turn. I do not want to benefit from any of this today. Above all, the number one thing that we need to do right now is to love deeply. Our world is hurting. Humans are hurting so deeply that I believe it's now embedded into their DNA. This pain has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And it's our job to change history. It's our job to create equality. And I hope that you choose to be a part of that journey. Life is really crazy. And sometimes you feel really, really crazy, especially when you realize that you're benefiting off of a world that was built on the backs of other people. And now you're ready to undo everything that you've learned and just go forward. But you don't know if you're doing it right. You're not alone. I get it. Be happy and love each other.